Joining us now is former United States Congressman from Ohio, Tim Ryan, who also ran for president and just recently penned a spicy op-ed in Newsweek titled, "Kamala Harris should be the Democratic nominee for president in 2024. Congressman Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, let's start off with the latest news in regard to Joe Biden and whether or not he's planning on dropping out of the race. There was a big press conference today, and during that press conference, it was relayed to the American people that President Biden does in fact intend to remain in the race. What is your reaction to that?
I think that's a kind of standard at this point, that the administration, that the president would say that. It sounds like he still needs maybe a little bit of time. The polling coming in, whether it's CNN or New York Times, has a 6-point national lead for Trump. And then some swing state polling, 6 to 7 point lead for Trump in states like Michigan, Wisconsin. I think the other one may have been Minnesota or Pennsylvania, I can't remember. But the fact that those are in play, and you see a national campaign by the Republicans tying our Senate candidates to Joe Biden, I think at some point that the president, who I believe will do the right thing, and I think has done the right thing, will not run because he's going to take the whole ship down with him.
I totally agree with you that if he remains in the race, he's going to take the whole ship down with him. What do you make of the main campaign argument that the Biden campaign has made in regard to Donald Trump being a threat to democracy, while Biden, who's incredibly vulnerable to losing to Trump, just insists on remaining in the race? Like, what do you make of that?
I'm frustrated. I mean, to me, it's like, did you watch the debate? Did Joe Biden, rewatch the debate? Did they see what we saw? Because we love Joe Biden and he beat Donald Trump and he's reindustrialized the country and he's done a lot of good things for the country. And for them to think, after what happened at the debate, that this is okay. I mean, the thing I worry about the most is what we saw in real time during the debate was Trump start to shape shift issues. Whether it was COVID, whether it was the economy, whether it's climate, like he was able to kind of manipulate it without any pushback, without anybody calling BS on him. And so, to say that the next 4 months are going to go that way and we think we're going to be able to win I think it's ludicrous.
I'm going to say something that's probably going to offend you and maybe even members of the audience, but look, to me, the debate was far more catastrophic than what's being described by Democrats and by members of the media. Biden's performance created a situation in which I believe Donald Trump was able to look presidential. So I'll give you an example. During the debate, there was a weird moment where Biden felt the need to bring up golf and how he'd be a better golfer than Trump is. They're going back and forth about this nonsense. And Trump literally stopped and said, "Let's not be children here." Donald Trump said that. And so it was a devastating debate for Biden and for the Democrats for sure. And so I hope Biden does the right thing, but that's only half of the equation. The other half is, well, what happens after Biden does in fact decide he's going to step down? And you're calling for Kamala Harris to be his replacement. You write, witnessing Joe Biden's struggle was heartbreaking, and we must forge a new path forward. After deep reflection over these past few days, I strongly believe that our best path forward is Kamala Harris. Kamala was the highlight of a historically dreadful night. Across cable news stations, the vice president's performance was stellar, a ray of light in the darkness. Those who questioned her chops over the past several years were rebuked by a polished, confident leader, communicating clearly in the throes of a political meltdown of epic proportions. I loved watching it. Our vice president was masterful. Now, Congressman Ryan, I have to ask you, do you prefer indica, sativa, or maybe a hybrid strain? Because I need to understand what you're smoking.
I'm a variety kind of guy. I will tell you that I think that Kamala Harris I do understand that some people don't quite understand this line of argument. I don't think this is the same Kamala Harris you saw in 2020. There's been 3.5 years within the administration as vice president. And I think that's a very important thing. You all have had jobs. You grow into the job. You're better today at what you're doing than you were when you started. And I think Kamala Harris is going to be the same from a sheer political perspective. Where are we bleeding out right now? Bleeding out with young people. The different minority communities are not energized at all for us. And we've yet to really articulate and kind of prosecute the issue around choice. And I think Kamala Harris checks all of those boxes. I think she's going to rally the minority communities. I think she's going to rally a good deal of women as she begins to prosecute the pro-choice case. And most importantly, she's a generational candidate. And I think people are looking. I don't want to go with Biden. I don't want to go with Trump. We need somebody new. Let's give them somebody new. And I think most people would be impressed. And I actually think that she would do very well in working class communities like the ones I grew up in around Youngstown, Ohio, in Pittsburgh, in Flint, Michigan, in Milwaukee, in some of these working class towns in Wisconsin. So I think she'd do great there. And I think at this point, the cleanest way to do this is to put her forward and let's get behind her.
Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team. Respectfully, I think a mistake that the Democratic Party keeps making, and they really need to stop making this mistake, is rather than listen to the actual legitimate concerns of various communities, various demographics, for instance, whether it be the Black community, Latino community, I feel like there's this effort to just provide the optics of change or representation, right? Like, oh, look at us, we have such a diverse cabinet. Oh, we have a half Black, half Indian vice president. Isn't this good enough? But I think people have become far more privy to the notion that their core concerns are kind of being ignored or brushed aside in exchange for the optics of representation. And you talk about working class communities and how Kamala Harris would be a great representative for those communities. I mean, I remember a few years ago, she was being asked about Republican efforts to implement voter ID laws. And she was talking about rural communities in a way that led to a lot of backlash from those living in rural communities. She said something about how, people living in rural communities, they don't have a Kinko's nearby. They can't photocopy their ID. They didn't like that because it just made it seem like people living in rural communities across this country are like, I don't know, just completely disconnected from civilization. And so I do worry that some of her communication is not really going well with working class communities or rural communities. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the key to what you said was that was a couple of years ago. I mean, that kind of speaks to my point that I think she has grown into the job. I think she's traveled the country for the last 3.5 years, traveled the world for the last 3.5 years. And so I think those experiences to me culminated on election night, or not election night, debate night. I mean, what we saw there was somebody who was handling a very high pressured political situation, which is what you want from a president, to be able to function in that environment and thrive. And I think that she has seen the country in the last 3.5 years. And so I think those things that maybe she didn't understand, I bet that she does now understand. And look, no candidate's going to be perfect. There's always going to be a candidate that's a certain style, from a certain area, a certain demographic, geographically from somewhere that may not completely understand some of the others. That's what campaigns are for. That's what, in her case, being VP is for. Getting out there and meeting people, listening to people, trying to best understand their needs. I think she's going to be very, very good at that. And again, look, we're in a scenario here where there's no great, perfect scenario. There weren't any primaries, unfortunately, to test other candidates out, and so that puts us in a bad spot. And so there's no easy answer here, but I think the greatest risk is that President Biden stays in and is unable to beat back some of the lies and reframing that Trump is doing.
Look, I certainly agree that there are no easy answers here. And I also agree that Biden remaining in the race is a really bad idea. But one other data point that I'll just bring up is prior to the debate, the Biden White House was not enjoying high approval ratings. And in fact, the average of polls, both national polls and the polling of swing states, indicated that Biden was trailing Trump in some of the swing states by a lot. And so this wasn't a popular ticket before the debate. And the question was, are they going to be able to eke out a win and maybe change the narrative to garner more support among independents who ultimately are the deciders of the general election? Now you also have a possibility of Kamala Harris replacing Biden. Let's say if best case scenario, what you'd like to happen happens. Are you at all concerned that some of the, for lack of a better word, stench of the Biden administration will haunt her as she tries to beat Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, I ran for Senate in Ohio almost 2 years ago, and carrying that Democratic brand generally hurts candidates. You'll see all of our candidates, many of them saying, I'm a Democrat, or I'm not that kind of Democrat, or they try to reframe it to who they are personally as a candidate, because I think the Dem brand is bad, and that sticks to all of us who run for public office under the Democratic banner. So I think there is a scenario where that will affect her to some extent, but at the same time, I think a lot of people, you read about the double haters in the polling, right? They hate Biden, they hate Trump. They're just looking for somebody new. Let's give them somebody new. And I think Kamala has a great record in California that can be a part of it. We've got a great record on reindustrialization, the fight against choice, and all of that. So I think she'd be great. I think she'd be as good, if not better, than any other candidate we can get. We can get her in a clean way and get moving.
Final question for you, because I can't help myself. I live in California, so I've seen what Governor Gavin Newsom's leadership is like. I'm curious what you think about those calling for the replacement to be Gavin Newsom as opposed to Kamala Harris.
I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about Gavin. I've seen him on a couple shows, super articulate, super smooth. I don't know, a whole lot about his policies or California. I know that the state has challenges like every other state.
No, not like every other state. California is true. A disaster zone. Okay.
They have some very unique challenges, from water to homelessness to this, all of these issues. So, I don't know. I mean, I got a lot of respect for what I know about him, but I don't know a whole lot.
All right. Well, Congressman Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I hope you'll come back soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.